Now, Jason, some of the conversation last week stemmed around the news that Milton will be unleashed for spring practice. Now, we know, of course, quarterbacks are not to be
Yeah.
touched, which makes total sense, but that at least he would be involved in all the drills and all the reps.
Yeah, and I think it's good. Which all kidding aside, and I stand by my position that my worry about him is his mobility. He has not played in a college football game since November 2018. That's just a fact. He's going to be going up in his first game against a Notre Dame team that was one of the 4 teams left standing in the college football playoff. Also a fact. It's not going to be the same Notre Dame team that we played last year, the same Notre Dame team that made that playoff, but it's going to be a very good Notre Dame team. That's my worry. What I want to see in the spring game is he needs to give fans that confidence. He needs to give them that swagger. He needs to connect on the deep ball. He needs to make connections with the receivers. He needs to make connections, basically showing that he can run that offense, both the way that Norvell, the way that Kenny Dillingham, they want to run that offense, and basically give some confidence. I think Jordan Travis is a very good player. I'm happy that Jordan Travis was our starting quarterback for over half the season. I liked him. I think that you need to see Milton's arm. We need to see Milton's arm. The mobility is something we can talk about later on as we get closer to the actual regular season. You're not going to see anything in the spring game. They don't want another Dan Kendra episode, what happened during the 98 spring game. You just need to see his arm. He needs to give you that confidence, that hope that things are going to be better. Because remember, Florida State hasn't had a spring game since Willie Taggart was the head coach. Norvell's spring game got canceled last year due to COVID. So that's what we need right there. So I think it's a good move. My concern with that is I'm going to be concerned with him every single time somebody runs after him. Whether it's a Florida State player in practice, even though they can't tackle him, or coming up that first game against Notre Dame. I think that first game against Notre Dame, you're going to have collective breath holding until he takes that first hit.
Our man, DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk, Clemson fan, Super Chat contribution. Thank you so much, DeAndre. You know that we appreciate that. From 1977 to 1991, which I've got a pretty good grip on, both for Clemson and Florida State, as does Jason. Was Clemson a better football program than FSU? I would say yes. Well, the Florida State football program was much different in 1977 than it was in 1991. So you can't really group that together for FSU in particular. You're talking about, as Jason has outlined many times, Bobby Bowden taking one of the worst programs in the nation and completely resurrecting it within 3 to 4 years, in which they're participating in Orange Bowls in 1979 and 1980 as a top 5 team in the nation after being dismal, winless just years earlier. And then, of course, quickly became a power. And pretty much by, in the early 80s, they weren't great, but they were really good. They were winning. There were a lot of 8-4 kind of campaigns in the early 80s, and then they hit their stride. 87, they had a great season. Dion showed up. They really took off after that. And then, of course, went on the most historic run in the history of college football for having top 4 finishes.
Clemson benefited by the same thing that Florida State benefited when Florida State won the first 9 ACC titles in their first 9 seasons. The ACC was god-awful. As a football conference, the ACC was god-awful pathetic. You could argue from 1970 to probably, I'd say 2000, that 30-year period, there was a god-awful football conference. Florida State was brought in to help bring up the football of the conference, and we knew full well we were going to get our butts kicked in basketball, which is exactly what happened, but we were going to bring up the conference in football. And I think that Clemson has always been a good program. Don't want to take anything away from Clemson, but they have also benefited by knowing that they had to step up their recruiting game, step up their facility game, to compete with the Florida State dynasty that came into the ACC. And Clemson has done it. Dabo Swinney has done it. The Clemson administration has done it. But they knew full well that the reason they had to do it was because from 1992 to 2002, they were getting their butt kicked on a yearly basis by Florida State.
Clemson, of course, won a national championship under Danny Ford in 1981. They beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl that year. DeAndre, for whatever reason, is selected 1977 as a starting point. Clemson went 8-3-1 and lost the Gator Bowl that year to what would have been Hugh Green and company. 1 year after Tony Dorsett won the Heisman Trophy, Clemson beat Ohio State in the Gator Bowl the next year to go 11-1. They had an 8-4 season the next year.
They got your coach fired from Ohio State.
Baylor in a bowl game. We're not going to go through the entire history of year to year of Clemson's 15-year run there from 1977 to 91, but they weren't a serious contender for a national championship other than the year that they actually won it, but they were generally a top 15 to 20 program.
Are you still mad at them because they were one of the reasons that Woody Hayes got fired? Woody Hayes punching a Clemson player. Clemson brought out Woody Hayes' anger. That's how evil Clemson is. He saw that orange and he just said, I can't deal with this. It's like me when I see Gator orange. It's like,
Ohio State football at that point couldn't believe that it was losing to Clemson.
I couldn't believe he was losing to Clemson. I wasn't even born yet, and I still couldn't believe he was losing.
But that was a one-loss Clemson team. That was a 4-loss Ohio State team. So it was because of your status as a football program, even having a 7-4 season, you get elevated to the Gator Bowl playing a 10-1 team.